Hi there guys, I'm going to be doing a quick review of the DeathAdder V2. I've been a long time DeathAdder user. I used the Chroma, the Elite before this one, and I've used many other mice over time that I'm going to be drawing some comparisons to as I go through. Overall, I think this is a really good mouse. If you have large hands and you like an ergonomic shape, then this will probably work pretty well for you, would be my expectation. I think that if you choke up on the mouse a lot and you palm grip it, it's pretty comfortable. If you claw grip it, works for that really well as well. The way I like to hold it personally is I like to take this groove on the bottom where I just kind of line my thumb up here, and then I just kind of rest my fingers comfortably there. It's more of a fingertip grip for me. One of my biggest gripes with this mouse is, when I hold the mouse the way it's comfortable for me, I find it very uncomfortable to reach this furthest back side button that's closest to the front flare. And it's not a problem if you're a claw user. It's not a problem if you choke up on it, if you prefer to choke up on the mouse more and full-blown palm it. But my issue with doing that is whenever I'm doing that, you notice the base of the thumb kind of gets in the way, and I just don't find that as comfortable as lining it up here. That's personally how I like to hold the mouse. That's always been a thorn in my side with the DeathAdder. If I could change one thing about the mouse, I think it would just be taking these buttons and shifting them backwards, a little bit. That's how I feel about it. It's always bothered me. I've seen it come up in some forums as well. Other people also have that problem. And usually the comeback people use is that they have small hands, but they can be so, but I think it also comes down to what your grip style is. And my issue is if I choke up on the mouse too much, I also am more, my ring finger kind of comes off the end. So the most comfortable way to hold it for me, at least, and I do think it's very comfortable. It's probably the most comfortable mouse I've used. Gripping in this fashion, it's tough to reach that furthest back button sometimes, and that bugs me. The other thing that bugs me about it is if you look at the top DPI buttons, I think there's actually been a regression here from like the Elite. So on the Elite, the DPI buttons are pushed right up against the scroll wheel, right? They're really close to it. Whereas on the V2, they've moved them backwards a little bit with this long black bar. So I much prefer having these buttons as close to the scroll wheel as possible, because when I'm playing a game, let's say I've rebound these to buttons in game, the way that I'm going to hit them is with this finger here, probably, or really any finger you hit them with. If it's closer to the scroll wheel, it's just a little bit easier to reach. So to me, I want them in the next version to take this long black bar, shorten it up so it's just the size of the buttons, and then push it right up against the scroll wheel. If they shifted the side buttons back a little bit, and if they improved the DPI button placement, I think this would be my favorite mouse ever. But those two things have always bothered me, and I don't experience those issues on other similarly sized palm grip mice, let's say. So like the Zowie EC1, I actually personally find maybe a little bit less comfortable, but I've never had the same issues reaching both side buttons. And also that's an unpopular opinion. It seems most reviewers actually find the EC1 more comfortable, at least if you're full-blown palming it, from what I've read. I do think they've done a good job with the shape. I generally feel I have enough room for my ring finger, my pinky. A lot of smaller mice, that's always my complaint, is something like the Zowie EC2. The left side of that mouse is just perfect for me. But the problem is I never feel like I have enough room to rest these fingers, and it just doesn't end up being comfortable for that reason. But then the EC1 is, almost a little too big for comparison. So I ended up settling on this. You do have to use Razer Synapse for this at least once. It does have onboard profiles, so you can store the settings you want and then uninstall Synapse if you want. So that's a nice improvement over the last one. I do think the button quality is great. Unlike some other mice, there's very little post travel on the buttons, so they feel great. I really like the kind of rubberized grips they have here. A lot of people don't like those because they wear down over time, or they find it makes it harder to shift their grip in real time. But whatever material they've used for these have not worn down on me. And it's been like a year and a half. You know, whereas on something like the SteelSeries Rival 310, man, those wore down on me like crazy, and they just don't look good after some time. I also like that there's some subtle, very subtle texturing that they put onto these buttons. I like that a lot. Something like the Zowie, the buttons are just flat, you know, smooth plastic, and I think I prefer this type of material. I like the coating that they put on the V2. I don't know if I like it as much as the EC1 coating or the EC2 coating on the -C variants, but I think it is a very good coating. Just to go through all the buttons really quick, I think they all feel great. The scroll wheel on the DeathAdder is probably my favorite that I've used. I've used many mice. I've used the N65 Elite. I've used the 502, the 403 from Logitech. I've used the EC2 and the EC1 and the Model D, the Iron Claw. I've gone through a lot of mice over time. This is my favorite scroll wheel that I've used, and the reason is because it's smooth, you know, but you can feel these defined steps in a way that I think works great for gaming, and it's not super loud, which I appreciate. And the middle click I love on this because they found a good balance, I think, where I don't press it on accident. It's not so light that I'm pressing on an accident when I try to scroll, but it's light enough that I can actually use this as a button in game, and it's very comfortable. Whereas, you know, something like the VAXI Outset or the EC2-C, I hate the scroll wheels on those, not because of the tactility. I actually prefer tactility, you know, for games. The reason I hate those scroll wheels is because the middle click is so difficult to actuate that I like feel like I'm going to break the mouse. This was even worse on the outset than the EC2. And then it also just requires a lot of actuation force comparatively to scroll the mouse. But really, my issue with those scroll wheels has everything to do with the middle click being too hard to actuate. I don't care for that. So it does have some of the better mouse feet, I think, available, and you've also got this profile button down here. What I personally do is I rebind these to you know, buttons to use in games, and then I never switch my DPI, but if I wanted to, I would just switch the profiles. It has some good mouse feet. I do think they wear down a little bit over time, but you know, I don't know if you could find mouse feet that don't do that. But fortunately, there are, you know, many replacement skates for a mouse this popular. One thing I noticed that does bug me is if you look closely, I've cleaned it out recently, but all of these little fine lines around the sensor and around the feet and in these cracks, they get just filled up with dust over time, and it just looks hideous. And so I try to like clean it out every now and then, but you know, I had an old one where I actually scratched the plastic on the bottom trying to do that. So it's a minor thing. I don't know that it'll bother most people, but it does bother me. The optical switches, so going back to the debounce, so most mice have mechanical switches with a debounce delay, which, you know, it's not huge. I doubt most people would perceive the increased latency of something like a 8 millisecond or 4 millisecond debounce. But with optical switches, you and that's to prevent a double clicking issue, but with optical switches like Razer's using, you don't get that. Some other reviewers have criticized the feel and the sound of the clicks. I've never felt that way personally. I think they're very solid. They're a pretty light actuation force, but I like that personally. Some people don't. Some people like heavier clicks. The sensor on this is really good. It's at least at the time of making this video, it's a very solid sensor. It's one of the better sensors around at this point in time, and feels very responsive to me. I've got no issue with it. But sensors in general at this point tend to be fairly good. One difference between this and the Pro, the wireless, is I think on that one they have, instead of just having this small portion be rubber on either side, they've kind of taken this entire side plate and made it the same material. And I like that in theory, but I've not yet used that mouse. The cable, I think it would have been cool if they had angled it upwards a little bit, like they do on the new Zowie mice. I like that a lot. Kind of keeps your way a little bit better. I've not had a problem with this cable. It's not the best cable I've used. I really like the cables on the EC2-C, the EC1-C. Those might be my favorite cables I've used personally. The VAXI Outset AX, I know a lot of reviewers complained about the cable, but the cable on that mouse just drove me insane. It really got in my way, and I hated it. That's my biggest gripe with it, actually, other than the scroll wheel middle click being tough to actuate. But yeah, overall, if you have large hands and you like to palm grip mice, or claw grip even, I think this is a very comfortable mouse for claw grip, and it makes it very easy to reach kind of the furthest back button if you prefer this grip style. I think this is an excellent mouse. I wouldn't recommend this if you don't like ergo mice. I wouldn't recommend it if you don't have, you know, decently large hands. I think if you have smaller hands, something like an EC2-C might be better overall. I've not tried the DeathAdder Mini myself, so I can't comment on it. Yeah, I think this is a great mouse. I kind of feel like there is a lot of distaste for the DeathAdder line that I see in mouse reviews and things of this nature. And, you know, some of that's deserved. Again, I don't think it's a perfect mouse. The side button placement bugs me. I think the DPI button placement could be improved, things like that. But, you know, it's a comfortable mouse for large hands, so I like it a lot. My favorite scroll wheel on any mouse. One of my favorite shapes, personally. But anyway, yeah, that's if you think it would appeal to you, then you can pick one up, I guess. But thanks for your time. I appreciate it. Have a good one. Bye.